aside plans to open new ones. Michael Harrington reporting.
Religious leaders and civil rights activists are condemning what authorities say was an act of arson over the weekend that heavily damaged an historic Mississippi synagogue. The Beth Israel congregation had been bombed decades ago for the congregation's role in the civil rights movement. Synagogue leaders say they are assessing damage, but will continue regular worship programs and services for Shabbat, likely at one of the local churches that have reached out offering their assistance. This is SRN News. He brought a lot of joy to Americans through his cartoon strips that often cut close to home as he made fun of a lot of the problems in the business world. Cartoonist Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, has passed away. Here's George Williams with a report.
Dilbert became a global cultural staple, with the strip appearing in 2,000 newspapers in at least 70 countries and 25 languages. That's not to mention the countless numbers of folks who'd save a clip of their favorite misadventure and tack it or tape it up in a workspace as an ironic, motivational happy place to get through an otherwise dreary workday. The hero and accompanying cast of stereotypical bosses, supervisors, underlings, and even a caustic cat satirized the foibles and tech-speak of modern office culture. In a statement prior to his passing, Adams reflected in part, quote, "I had an amazing life. I gave it everything I had," unquote. Scott Adams passing away from prostate cancer at age 68. George Williams reporting.
More on these stories at srnnews.com.
1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 7. Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. 1 Peter 5:7, God's promise of his care for us.
Did you know VCY America is available worldwide on the Internet? Visit vcy.org and click on radio. That's vcy.org.
VCY America is on the air. KBCX Gregory, WVIW Bridgeport. Online at vcyamerica.org.
History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
James Oglethorpe joined the Austrian army and was fighting Turks at age 17. Back in England, he entered Parliament and presided over prison reforms, where he got the idea of founding a colony in America where the poor and destitute could start afresh and where persecuted Protestants could find refuge. James Oglethorpe secured a charter for the colony of Georgia, and on this day, January 13th, 1733, as the 120 settlers went ashore, they knelt and declared, "Our end in leaving our native country is not to gain riches and honor, but singly this, to live wholly to the glory of God."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here on VCY America. Ladies and gentlemen, violent protests have been building and are rocking the very foundations of Iran. The death toll climbing day after day as the streets are erupting to bring down the present regime. Iranian authorities have slaughtered many. The Iranian government actively seeking to interrupt all internet access to keep video footage from going out of this nation. Israel on high alert. President Trump has signaled possible intervention today, canceling all meetings with Iranian officials and posting help is on the way. So what is causing this groundswell of opposition? How does all of this impact Israel? And is there a prophetic nexus to all that's unfolding? Well, joining us today, we welcome Chris Katulka, Vice President of North American Ministries at the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry. He is host of the Friends of Israel Today radio broadcast. He is a Bible teacher, a writer for Israel My Glory magazine, and author of the book Israel Always. Chris, Happy New Year, and welcome back here to Crosstalk.
Jim, thanks for having me back in 2026.
So I saw a column from Pamela Geller yesterday, and she posted, this is not a protest, this is a revolution, this is a war. Chris, tell us, what is the genesis of these protests in Iran, and what is their causation?
Well, I boil it down to four things, okay, Jim, four big things. Number one, January 2025, a big moment happened globally. Trump became the president of the United States of America and the leader of the free world, which absolutely changed the dynamic of how the world, the whole world philosophy. And so this is a big shift in how we understand what's going on in Iran today. No more playing diplomacy. Trump created a different environment for the Middle East and for the world in general. Number two, one that not too many people are talking about, but it is a serious, serious issue, and that's the fact that Iran has been in a drought for the last 5 to 6 years. And that drought has gotten so bad that actually the president of Iran is planning on moving the capital from Tehran to an area closer to water. He actually has to move the capital. That's the plan that they have because they have no water. We're talking about millions of people without water. We're talking about reservoirs that have absolutely dried up. And then on top of that, they had a very large underground water springs underground that they were tapping into, and they were using them so much that they've all but dried up the reservoirs underneath the earth. All of the wells have dried up. So they literally have no water. So they are in a very difficult place, and I know Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken to the Iranian people, letting them know he has ways to get them water, but he doesn't want to speak to the Ayatollahs. He wants to speak to the Iranian people. I also know another big one, number three, is inflation. Inflation, I've heard, can be as high as 300% for the Iranian people. They have no money, and then the government promises each person $7 a month, which is absolutely nothing in order to help them out. They have no money. They did a run on the banks in Iran to try to collect as much money out of their accounts as they possibly could, and so they have no money, high inflation, and then the humiliation of the 12-day war with Israel has, I believe, ultimately led to this moment where you have the Ayatollahs, the Islamic regime is crumbling, not from the outside in, Jim, but from the inside out.
Wow. And, I'm seeing numbers just really all across the board, from hundreds killed to thousands killed. What do you know from your sources?
Yeah, I've seen everything from 600 to, I think last I saw was maybe 3,000 have been murdered. I've seen women laying next to bodies in body bags, Iranian women. It's not going to get easier. They're trying to quell the Islamic regime is trying to quell the uprisings that are taking place, the protests that are taking place, to put the people in their place. And quite honestly, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that we could really see the regime fall, and the question is, what will happen? What will Trump do? Will Trump go with the way that diplomatic policy has worked in the past with the Obama administration, the Biden administration, or is he going to go a completely different route and support the people? Obama could have supported the Iranian people when in his second term with the Green Party that was rising up to try to create freedom for the Iranian people. And what did that lead to? It actually led to the JCPOA, which is the Iranian deal, which only shook hands with the Ayatollahs. This is a different era that we're living in. The question is, will Trump go that direction, or will he go a completely different direction? And quite honestly, I think he's going toward the protesters who are looking for freedom and not the Ayatollahs.
Yeah, no, and we'll get more into that. But isn't the Ayatollahs turning on the Iranians, on the citizens of Iran? Isn't that only stoking the flames?
Of course, you have to. In Iran, there are two different groups of people. You have the religious leaders and the ultra-religious people, the radical Islamists. And remember, they're not Sunni; they're Shia. And so you have an entire group of people who are like that. But what's happening is over the years, there's been a longing for freedom for Iranians, Persians to be themselves, and really this group of people who have desired freedom and to push away the oppression of the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic, is rising and gaining more traction. And again, I don't think, so some of it might be, hey, we're tired of this Islamic regime, we're tired of the Islamic oppression, but a lot of it also could just boil down to a lot of the Iranians looking and saying, our government has failed us. We have no water, and we have no money, and inflation is high, and there are no countries that are coming to our aid, none. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's quite interesting, to throw a little curveball in this conversation, as I recently saw a Jerusalem Post report, and I don't know if you've seen this, but many Iranians love Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. If you've looked at some of the video footage of Iranians protesting, occasionally not only will you see the old Persian flag flying before the revolution of 1979, you'll see the old flag flying, but you'll also see Israeli flags flying. They actually love Netanyahu. And some of the reports that I've been hearing is they love Israel because when they came and they attacked Iran during the 12-day war, many Iranians were impressed that the Israelis only targeted key sites that were dealing specifically with the regime and not civilians. And because they were targeting specifically the Ayatollahs and their structure, their leadership structure, it actually gave a sense of confidence for the Iranians to love the Israelis even more. And that's a Jerusalem Post report that came out, that Benjamin Netanyahu is actually more popular in Iran than Donald Trump is for the Iranian people. So just an interesting little twist there, because so often we hear death to Israel, death to America coming out of Iran. Mm-hmm. Well, are those minority voices, and the majority voices are Iranians saying, no, we've loved Israel for a long time and we love America? The question is, who is going to come to power if the Iranians, if the Ayatollahs do fall?
Yeah, you're talking about their love for Benjamin Netanyahu, but it seems, haven't they also renamed streets at Trump Street? In Iran?
They did rename it Trump Street. I did hear about that as well, because there's a hope for, like I said, January changed everything, Jim. January 2025 changed everything with Trump in office. It was a dynamic shift in how the world looks at American influence and power, and ultimately Western power as well. So I think really what we're seeing today is not just a byproduct of angry Iranians. I think we're seeing a byproduct of what it looks like in 2026, a year into the Trump administration.
So let's talk about what happens next. I mean, let's bring up the Crown Prince of Iran, who has been in exile. He is really asking to partner with the U.S. to liberate Iran. There was, the Shah system knocked out in what was under the Carter administration. And give us your input. Is this what would be coming back into power again?
I think this is going to be the question on how the Trump administration helps with these huge transitions, because Iran isn't the only one. We're seeing it happen in Venezuela right now. I think a lot of us were hoping that with the capture of Nicolas Maduro a few weeks ago, that we would have seen a radical change in the leadership of Venezuela. And we didn't see that. In fact, we saw that the Trump administration had been partnering with the vice president of Venezuela and apparently had been working with her behind the scenes for quite some time. Now, that we might look at that situation and say, this doesn't sound right, this doesn't sound like change, when in reality, I think what the Trump administration is trying to do is to try to provide the smoothest transition into democracy as possible with the greatest oversight as well. Where before, when we went into Iraq and Afghanistan, we went in, we demolished the leadership, and then we tried to install a democracy, and it didn't work out. I think the same thing's going to happen in Iran. I don't know how quickly the Trump administration or the Western nations will gravitate to the Pahlavi dynasty. That's the last dynasty up until 1979. The Pahlavi dynasty, and again, the exiled crown prince is waiting patiently for his ability to return and to establish a democracy. But it will be interesting to see how the Trump administration, if it does fall, if the Ayatollahs and mullahs do fall, will it be a smooth, a very quick transition to the Pahlavi dynasty again, or will there be some type of slow transition to make sure democracy actually has a foothold in some of these places, like Venezuela and like Iran?
Friends, we're talking with Chris Katulka, Vice President of North American Ministries at the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry. And Chris, today President Trump posted on social media, and I quote, "Iranian patriots take over your institutions. Save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killings of protesters stops." He then concludes, help is on its way. And then MIGA, standing for Make Iran Great Again. What are we seeing here, Chris, from the president?
Well, this is big. Again, we had been talking about what's his philosophy going to be? How's he going to manage Iran? See, in the past, what has happened is Iran gets cornered. Under the Obama administration, Iran gets cornered, and then what happens is they come to the negotiation table, and it looks like everybody's about to shake hands and make a good deal. And what ends up happening is Iran ends up cheating the United States and cheating the Western nations into getting what they want while maintaining their power. And I think Trump has seen enough of this, and I think he knows. I mean, he's the one who eliminated the JCPOA, the Iran deal, which again came as a byproduct of these negotiations, of trying to make negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran. I believe, in my humble opinion, I think Trump is over making deals with the Republic of Iran, and I think he's looking to see what these protesters can do. I think I've even heard reports of President Trump saying he's all out supporting the protesters and encourages them to take over the country. I think I read a Fox News report about that today, encouraging those protesters to take over the country. And so I think he's fully behind them, and that's kind of the direction we're seeing things take place. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months, but there's change coming to Iran.
Yeah, change indeed. And the way things are going, months may be a little bit on the long side. We'll talk more about that after the break. Chris Katulka with us from the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation researcher with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, how primitive was early man?
Chris, early man was never primitive in an evolutionary sense at all. In the beginning, man was created in the image of God with great ability, even able to communicate with God face to face. All this was before sin, however, and we've been deteriorating ever since. Evidence continues to accumulate that long ago man was highly sophisticated, evidently even performing brain surgery. Skulls have been found with holes drilled in them for surgical reasons, and the person had survived. No, Chris, there never were primitive humans. There were some with less technology and not much education, but Stone Age cultures exist today. This is a level of civilization, but not an evolutionary stage, and it's been that way ever since, back in Genesis.
For free information on creation, visit us on the web at www.icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network. With us today, Chris Katulka, Vice President of North American Ministries at the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry. And Chris, you've been with us several times, but for those not familiar with your ministry, give us a word about what you do there.
Yeah, Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry was founded in 1938 out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when a group of Christian businessmen, pastors, and women saw the need of the Jewish people who were suffering under Hitler's hand directly after Kristallnacht. They got to work raising funds in churches to help buy the liberation of Jewish people, which is exactly what we did. Many of those Jewish people made their way over here to the United States, where our very first executive director, Dr. Victor Buxbazen, a Jewish believer in Jesus, would meet these beleaguered Holocaust survivors, provide them food, clothing, resources, socks, you name it. But even more importantly is the hope of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. And since 1938, the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry has been doing the same thing, providing humanitarian aid and help to our Jewish friends around the world, especially with the rise of anti-Semitism, and also bringing the hope of Jesus the Messiah. And so Friends of Israel have been doing that since 1938, and it's a joy to be a part of an organization that's biblically grounded in what God teaches about Israel and the Jewish people.
And you write on so many different issues in your magazine called Israel My Glory, and I understand, Chris, you're offering a free one-year subscription to our listeners.
That's right. If your listeners call our organization at 800-257-7843, they can get a one-year free subscription to our award-winning Christian magazine, Israel My Glory. And that's where we teach all about what the Bible says about Israel and the Jewish people, not looking at it from what's going on today through a media lens, but through a biblical lens to see what's going on in the Middle East, especially as we're talking about Iran right now. Mm-hmm. What is God doing? How do all these pieces fit into what God's ultimate plan of redemption is? And is God done with Israel? May it never be. These are the kind of conversations that we have in Israel My Glory.
Okay, friends, again, to receive that free one-year subscription to Israel My Glory magazine, just reach out to them by phone, 1-800-257-7843. 800-257-7843. I just heard Chris on Crosstalk offer this. Just wanted to call and obtain that free subscription. And while we're on the topic, you also have some stickers, I Love Israel stickers.
That's right. You know, I want to ship some of these stickers to Iran right now, yes, Jim, and see what they do with them. But we want to give 50 free stickers to your audience, and all they have to do is text me. It's a text line. They can text me at 424-444-1948. Again, that's 424-444-1948. We're going to send you 50 free stickers that you can use, all various types of stickers that say, I love Israel, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You can put it on your Bible, your water bottle, the back of your cell phone, your hard hat. I've seen that, the back of your car. All these stickers are great ways to start conversations, not only about why you biblically love Israel, but even more importantly, about the King of Israel, Jesus the Messiah.
Again, friends, to get those free stickers, just send a text to 424-444-1948. Chris, we're talking about President Trump and his posting today, talking about help is on the way. We don't know what that means yet. He has not announced what that means, but he also announced that the United States will be imposing tariffs on trade partners of the Iranian Islamic regime. Any country doing business pay a 25%, any and all business done in the United States. What countries, we know Venezuela has been a partnering country with Iran, but what other countries are engaged with Iran?
It's a big one. This is a big move because I think Trump is working so many angles here, and those angles are ultimately not only to help the Iranian people, but also to pressure two big countries, Jim, China and Russia. China and Russia. China does business with Iran. Russia does business with Iran. And these countries are, number one, Russia's already been sanctioned. And China is made deals with America. But I don't think Trump's going to skip over those deals. Over this issue, I think it's an opportunity for him to leverage his influence. And if you notice, Trump is, where China and Russia once had a great influence in Iran, in Venezuela, now all of a sudden Trump and the United States have that influence, which changes the global dynamic. And a lot of people say they think Trump is playing 4D chess. I don't know if he's playing 4D chess, but I do think he's playing the game of risk. And I do think he's looking at the world stage and finding out, look, we don't want to go to war. I don't want boots on the ground in Russia. And same thing with China. And the only way to create an influence is to be able to ultimately leverage these nations that they were using for American influence and not for Iranian, Chinese, Russia influence. So, again, I think Trump's looking at Iran in several different ways. Number one, get those protesters in a position of power. And number two, use that as leverage to push even further back and weaken Russia and China as well.
So this past Sunday, the Iranian parliament speaker gave a speech, and warned that the U.S. and Israel, warned them of retaliation in the event of a U.S. strike. And warning, he said, such a strike is going to make the U.S. and Israel targets. I'd like you to comment on that, because in one sense, Israel's already been a target from Iran through the Hamas and Hezbollah and so forth. But what about this statement from the Iranian parliament speaker?
Well, again, it's no surprise that this is the direction Iran goes, especially the leadership here, is to threaten, and they very well could find some way to attack the U.S. or find a way to attack Israel. The 12-Day War certainly did prove that Israel's defense systems are in a fantastic position to be able to defend itself against a serious ballistics missiles that are coming from Tehran. But at the same time, it doesn't. I still think that Iran has the capability of launching some small scale war, but it's all hot air, in my opinion, because what Israel did during the 12-Day War was show and flex its muscles to the Middle East. When Israel in less than a few days can take over Iran's skies and basically control the skies of Iran, it shows their influence and power in the region. And so, yes, they could do something. They could launch rockets, but I don't think they can do anything more than that. Again, they are suffering in Iran. As I mentioned in our first segment, they're dying from the inside out. The leadership of Iran is dying from the inside out. They have no water. They have no money. Their people are protesting. And any resemblance of being able to show any power is exactly what they're trying to do, when in reality they're crumbling right before our very eyes.
And I'm sure such an attack on Israel or the U.S. would trigger a massive response back, perhaps a very deadly blow to the regime as well. Chris, let me ask you this. We see what's unfolding before our very eyes, all in this new year. Is there any prophetic nexus to what's unfolding in Iran?
You and I were talking during the break, and, I think it's very significant that water is playing a role in this. If you go back to the Old Testament, God actually tells Israel in a covenant that he would judge Israel for not following him, and he would judge them and bring destruction on them if they don't follow him by bringing a famine, turning off the water. And I don't think that is necessarily just a conversation for Israel. It was definitely a covenantal a conversation between Israel and God. But in Isaiah chapter 24, it actually talks about the nations of the world. And God says this in Isaiah chapter 24, verse 1. He's talking about judgment of nations. He says, "See, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face and scatter its inhabitants." And when you get down to verse 4, it says, "The earth dries up and withers. The world languishes and withers. The heavens languish with the earth." And I think, again, God is showing us something here. This is not just influences of Israel coming into Iran or America coming into Iran. What's really eating Iran from the inside out is the fact that they have no water. It is a serious issue. And how do they have no water? Well, that's something that even with all the controls that they could possibly have, all of the wells that they've dug, all of the ways that they could possibly get water, God is showing, nope, I'm in control, and he's turned off the spigot in order, I believe, to change the dynamics of what's going on in Iran. So I'm just relying on the sovereignty of God here and saying I'm seeing what's happening from the inside, and the fact that the drought has been happening for 5 years, I think God has been setting this up for just the right time.
One other question on this issue, and I know we have more to discuss pertaining to Israel, but do you find it interesting, Chris, that all of the, huge, massive Free Palestine protests on university campuses across the U.S., that they're just mute as it relates to this issue? Where are the chants for free Iran?
Again, Jim, we've talked about this ad nauseum, all in 2025. And it's the same conversation that people will tell you, no, I just don't like Israel. I like Jewish people. I don't like Israel. This is a perfect image of why anti-Zionism, the hatred of Israel, is anti-Semitism. Because it's actually never just about Israel. It's about Jewish people. And so, again, the reason why you don't see uprisings and people protesting in order to support the protesters in Iran or the students on college campuses is because they don't talk about Iran, and they don't talk about the issues that are happening globally. They're learning in their classrooms to hate Israel, and that's it. That's all they know, to hate Israel. They don't even know why they hate Israel. They don't even know why they're called to hate Jewish people. It's just something that they learn from their professors. It's bred in universities and comes out in protests, so that even when there's an actual a situation going on in Iran right now where a government is shooting its own people and killing its own people, silence on university campuses.
Yep.
But when Israel defends itself against the Palestinians that have been attacking them for 20 years, launching rockets over, tens of thousands of rockets, and then Israel finally responds after October 7th, now all of a sudden campus protests rise up. It really has nothing to do with Israel. It has everything, in my humble opinion, to do with Jewish people and the rise of anti-Semitism.
Wow. Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America, and again, we're going to talk into our next segment as well, just some of the other goings-on with Israel and Hamas, this 20-point peace plan, and a few other issues, but do want to reiterate the fact that Chris has offered a one-year free subscription to their magazine, Israel My Glory, but all you have to do is ask for it by calling them at 800-257-7843. That's 800-257-7843. And then the 50 free stickers. People are putting these everywhere, cell phones in the back of their tablet devices, on their thermoses, and on the list goes. I Love Israel stickers. They're offering 50 of them free, but you just need to send a text to them at 424-444-1948. That's 424-444-1948. So, friends, we're going to take a quick break here from our program. And as we come back from the break, we're going to get into the other goings-on in the Middle East, because there is much taking place between Israel and Hamas. And where are things standing right now in this peace plan? Is Hamas just regrouping at this time? Also, we are going to find that the Trump administration is conducting airstrikes against ISIS in Syria. And we got Samoa planning to open an embassy in Jerusalem. So much unfolding in this short period of time. We'll be back in 1 minute. But by the way, the largest ever Japanese parliamentary delegation just visited Israel as well. We'll talk more about that after the break. This is Crosstalk coming your way from the VCY America Network.
When it comes to eternity, most people assume they will go to heaven thinking their good deeds will outweigh their bad, and God will allow them entrance. At most funerals, people will console one another saying they are in a better place. But how do you know that? How do you know if you will be in a better place? In the book, Are You Going to a Better Place?, author Richard Schmidt presents how you can know for sure that your sins are forgiven and you are on your way to heaven. See, after you die, there will be no negotiation with God. The scriptures provide the one way today that God's justice can be satisfied, guaranteeing that you will be in an eternal dwelling place with Him. One copy of this book is available for a donation of $10, 3 copies for $25, or 5 copies for a donation of $35. Call VCY 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk coming your way from VCY America. With us today, Chris Katulka, Vice President of North American Ministries at the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry. And friends, not one thing but another. I mean, it is just a constant barrage. Israel in there somewhere, and certainly with all that's unfolding with Iran right now, that nation in total disarray. But at the same time, Chris, we've got the issues going on with Hamas and other enemies against Israel. And Bring us up to date on the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. It seems like a very long step between, a process here between step one and step two in this 20-point peace plan. And there are some that are just speculating that this is giving Hamas too much time to just regroup. Where are we at in all of these issues pertaining to Hamas?
Yeah, well, just before the turn of the year, Trump met with Netanyahu, and I think it's good to kind of catch people up on what's going on here. The first phase of there's phases that are supposed to take place for this peace plan, and the first phase was, of course, a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Hamas was to return all the Israeli hostages, whether living or dead, within 72 hours of the agreement. Well, that didn't happen. There was an initial withdrawal of Israeli forces from areas of the Gaza Strip that would leave Israel technically in control over 53% of the territory. That's what that yellow line is. If any of your listeners have seen that yellow line, that's Israel controlling the 53% of the Gaza Strip on the border there. And then it was to release 250 Palestinian prisoners that were serving life sentences, and then 1,700 Gaza detainees. And what I don't think most people realize is that Israel was required to give over 15 Palestinian deceased Palestinian bodies back to the Palestinians in exchange for each one Israeli body that was taken hostage. So again, those are kind of what was supposed to play out, and some of it did and some of it didn't. There's been question as to who could have been breaking the ceasefire during this time as well, whether it was Hamas or Israel. Hamas was often the one that was instigating Israel, and Israel having to respond. But Trump, once again, as I believe was what happened from the meeting that happened at the end of December, is that Trump wants to move as quick as he possibly can to move into this phase two, whether or not phase one has been completed or not. And that would actually mean that there's some type of Palestinian government that's set in place to govern Gaza, which has actually been chosen. There's 15 Palestinian technocrats. Technocrats are basically people who have an expertise in a specific area for governance. And so there's 15 that have been chosen that were actually approved by Hamas, believe it or not, and also approved by Israel. So Israel did background checks on these 15 Palestinians that will be leading Gaza, and they gave the thumbs up for it. So ultimately now Israel is required to move back in phase two to 40% of Gaza, and then ultimately 15%, and then by phase three they're going to secure the entire perimeter of Gaza and get out of Gaza completely. They're also setting up a board of peace, which I'm sure you know about. There's about 7 or 8 countries, European countries and Middle Eastern countries, that have signed on to be a part of the board of peace. And then they also have what's called an international stabilization force that they're working to build. This is a group of countries that are looking to bring troops and influence into Gaza to provide protection. They can be from European and Western countries, the United States, all the way to Middle Eastern countries as well. And Trump is trying, and I believe he's trying as hard as he can to try to get people to come in and to be a part of this international stabilization force. But again, this creates a rub, Jim, because Israel technically doesn't want certain people with troops in Gaza.
Right.
And so this creates a rub for how Israel relates with America, how America relates with Israel, and how the other countries relate with Israel as well. But again, Trump is moving forward at a lightning pace as fast as he can so he doesn't stall this peace plan. I don't know if it's a good idea to rush it, but especially when you're talking about this board of peace and when you're also talking about this international stabilization force, all of this given a thumbs up from the United Nations as well. Could Hamas be regrouping, though, at this time? If this is no matter what, Hamas will always attempt to regroup. They are a well-organized machine. They're much smaller in number now. They've lost their key leadership, and they're also losing their funding coming from Iran. Mm-hmm. Iran is suffering as well. So, as you had mentioned earlier in the program, cutting off the head of the snake is ultimately going to prevent any training and funding from coming down into Hamas and Hezbollah and other areas as well that are bringing that terrorism to Israel. So, could they regroup? Yes. Have they been? They've launched some rockets. I've seen that. But ultimately, I do think that Israel has done all that they possibly could to quell an uprising, and I do think that of Hamas, and I do think that other countries' influences are going to play a role as well. So I don't know what the future of Hamas is. I'm more interested in seeing what the future of other countries in Israel will bring, because it's not just a U.S. diplomatic relationship with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It's now every nation's diplomatic relationship with Israel in Gaza. And that will be very interesting, because the thing that Trump has done differently than any other country, a time period I've ever seen with Israeli relations, is in the past, the diplomacy has always come from the West to Israel, Western nations to Israel. You know, now with the Abraham Accords, now you're talking about these Middle Eastern countries and Gulf countries that are partnering with European countries, that are partnering with the United States in order to have influence in Israel. That's a game changer, because now it's not just the West talking to Israel. Now it's the Middle East talking to Israel as well, and that will change the conversation 100%. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, and I don't think Hamas will ultimately have the power it used to prior to October 7th.
And, you know, on that same train of thought here, we got Samoa planning to open an embassy in Jerusalem, and I just saw the largest ever Japanese parliamentary delegation just visited Israel as well.
You know, the one thing that's absolutely amazing is that if you're a media news junkie, you know, you might get depressed seeing all of the animosity toward Israel.
Mm-hmm.
But if you dig deep into the news like you're doing, Jim, what you'll actually find is that Israel's relationship on other levels with other countries continues to deepen when it comes to security, technology, when it comes to even tours to Israel for the Holy Land tours. You know, there are so many ways that Israel is connected to so many countries, even to the point where I had mentioned earlier that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did a video targeting the Iranian people, telling them, I can bring you water right now if you want it. You just have to stand up against your government. I can bring this for you. So there are so many ways that Israel is helping the world, that the world wants to have a relationship with Israel because of its startup nation qualities, bringing technology, medical, pharmaceuticals, you name it. Israel is in it, and the countries want a part of it as well.
Friends, our phone number to Crosstalk today, 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Taking your questions here for Chris as it pertains to Israel, what's happening with Iran right now, and the buildup that's been taking place there, the protests, the uprisings, and perhaps the downfall of the present regime in Iran. 1-800-733-9829. And, Chris, at the same time, we've got the Trump administration just recently conducting these airstrikes against ISIS in Syria.
Yeah, again, ISIS is a theme of the Trump administration from the past and today. Again, these are very different. This isn't ISIS is not like fighting a country with a military. It's an ideology, Jim. So it will always find a way to rise up. It's Islamic radicalism, and so this will always be an issue. And ISIS is a perfect place for Syria is a perfect place for the breeding ground of ISIS because of the chaos in Syria right now. As much as they're trying to bring some semblance of stability to Syria, it's still a perfect breeding ground for radical Islamic training, ISIS, you name it, and that's why Trump's got to go in and make sure this doesn't metastasize. This is a problem, allowing ISIS to metastasize like what it did during the Obama administration.
Friends, again, our phone number to Crosstalk today, 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. Chris, something else that's unfolding at the same time, I see the Defense Ministry of Israel just announced Sunday the delivery of the first Iron Beam system to the IDF. I mean, this is Israel's very revolutionary laser air defense platform.
This is a game changer, Jim, the Iron Beam, which is it's going to get rid of rockets. You know, we're talking about pennies on the dollar to destroy any type of ballistic missile or rocket that's launched into Israel. In the past, it could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to launch a specific rocket up from the Iron Dome, and that rocket would target and attack a terrorist rocket and blow it up midair. That's how Israel's been surviving for the past 15-plus years, with all the rockets and ballistic missiles that have been coming from Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran. But now, for just the cost of turning on a light bulb, they're going to target each rocket with a laser beam that will dismantle it in the sky with a laser and ultimately cause it to fall to the ground. This kind of technology is a game changer because Israel is leading the way in this technology and, of course, have partnered. I don't know if you've heard the critics saying that America should not be giving money to Israel to the tune of $3.5 billion per year. And they question America's partnership with Israel. But see, when Israel and America partner, they develop amazing security technology like the Iron Beam, like the Iron Dome. And now what you have is President Trump wants to build the Golden Dome, which will be the exact same thing that protects us over here in the United States of America. And I am sure that we're going to see some type of laser technology like what Israel has developed, the Iron Beam. And this is a game changer because, again, in the next couple decades, Jim, you might no longer see Israelis using normal guns. This kind of technology could easily be used in a handheld gun as well. Talking about the future of warfare, you're looking at it, and Israel might have been a developer of it here. But that comes from Ambassador Oren, Michael Oren, who was sharing that with Hugh Hewitt not too long ago. This could be a game changer in the future of warfare as well.
And just one more issue before we go to the phone lines, and that is pertaining to the funding of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu has talked about becoming, self-sufficient, not relying upon U.S. funding. I believe there's about a 10-year plan as far as decreasing that funding. But now we have Senator Lindsey Graham said no, who's been a proponent for Israel, talking about speeding that up and having Israel go off funding from the U.S. In a much more rapid fashion.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because, see, whenever we gave money to Israel, Jim, the actual stipulations were not to help them with their health care and their domestic issues. The moment Israel would get that money, a part of the deal was you have to spend that money back in America to buy F-35s, to buy our technology over here, to put Americans to work in order to help for security in Israel. These weren't things. I always see critics say, oh, this money's coming over to help their socialized medical care and their social systems. That's not what the money was for. The money was actually a joint partnership that had a return on investment that was well beyond $3 billion. So, again, it's trying to show that I think Israel's trying to show the United States, because of all the criticism, we can handle ourselves. You don't have to help anymore. But I actually think that partnership has been a partnership that not only helps Israel, but also helps the security of America as well.
Friends, Chris Katulka with us. Have a line or two open yet? You can get through to us at 800-733-9829. Your questions or brief comments back in 1 minute here on Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Can I challenge you for 2026 to study with me or on your own the book of Daniel? On Sunday night, I started my verse-by-verse study through the book of Daniel. We just finished up Revelation after a year and a half. Daniel is such a wonderful book. Not only is it the foundation for Revelation, but Daniel is confronting many things we confront today, such as living for God in a pagan culture. How about persecution? You've heard of course, the fiery furnace, the lion's den. But yet also how to be an example to the unbeliever, even pagan leaders. The book of Daniel is one of the most attacked books because of predictive prophecy. The experts, so-called, want to bring it 400 years into the future to say that it's history, not predictive prophecy. But we know that it was written before the events occurred, showing the supernatural nature of God's word. This year, study, will you, the book of Daniel. I'm Brandon House.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Chris Katulka with us. We're talking about, Iran in disarray. We're talking about Israel. Friends, and the prophetic nexus to all of this as well. Our number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Judy is calling from Waukesha, Wisconsin. Judy, you're on the air.
Yes, I was just wondering why the Jews are so hated.
Why, Chris?
Well, Jim, Judy, I wish I could spend an hour with you talking about this, but I believe it comes down to a promise that God made to Abraham of a land, Israel, the descendants, the Jewish people, and a promise that God made to Abraham that through you all the families of the earth will be blessed, which means that God chose the Jewish people to bring salvation into the world. Jesus even said that in John chapter 4. Salvation is of the Jews. And because salvation is of the Jews, then that means that the Jewish people will be a target of Satan, just as the church is a target of Satan, because we carry the message of hope and redemption. And I wish I could go deeper, Judy, but that's all I can say right now is it's a spiritual battle, and Satan is doing all that he can to snuff out the Jewish people because God's not through with them yet. And if God's not through with Israel yet, he's not through with you and me yet either, and he's coming back again.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy. Our number 800-733-9829. We've got Lori calling from Michigan. Lori, you're on the air.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the program. And Chris Katalka, I have a question for you. Do you think that this could be come if we actually get involved militarily in any way over there in Iran to save these dear people's lives in the streets and everything else? I guess they're taking them out of their homes, dragging them out. But if we do, is there a possibility of some of these terror cells in America, Russia, and even China or other nations coming after us? Is there a possibility of that? What do you think?
Thank you, Lori.
And I'll take your answer off the phone here.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, a great question. I don't know what the response will be and how what the response will be on the back end. You know, we had mentioned earlier in the program that there is a desire among the Iranian people for freedom, but there's also a group of Iranians that don't want that freedom. They want the Ayatollahs. In fact, I don't know if you saw recently, but during a protest, I believe here in the United States, a pro-Ayatollah individual drove a U-Haul truck through a crowd of people protesting for the freedom of Iran. And it said, there was a sign on the side of the U-Haul that said, I don't want to get rid of the Ayatollahs. They should stay. So, again, I don't know what will happen, what will rise up. I don't know if we're going to – I hope it doesn't result in us having to have boots on the ground in Iran. But I do think you will see a response. I just don't know what it will look like.
Yeah. Let me also ask, Chris, about, the nuclear facilities that were decimated when we put in that big busting bomb from the U.S., and, of course, Israel engaged in that as well. We've been told that Iran is rebuilding nuclear, that they're cleaning things out to, go at it full force. Where does that stand?
This is always a big question, is where is the nuclear facility? Is it still existent, non-existent? There have been conversations that it's been completely wiped out, that it's only been set back so many years. I don't know exactly where it is. I think if you talk to President Trump, he'll tell you it's done, let's move on. I think if you talk to more individuals with intelligence on the ground, and maybe Israel, it set back the Iranian nuclear ambition for a few years. They could rebuild again. But I don't know exactly where they stand right now, but I do know there's question as to whether or not it's been completely decimated.
Also, as we talk about these matters with Israel, the Middle East, Iran, and all this unfolding, why should this matter? We're here in the United States of America. Why should this matter to us?
Yeah, Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Their people are broke, but they also find a way to spend billions of dollars funding Hamas over the years, Hezbollah, the Houthis. These are all partners of terror with Iran. See, Iran's goal, Jim, in 1979, the revolution of Iran for the Ayatollahs was not just to simply stay within Iran. They wanted to spread the Islamic revolution to all of the Middle East. They felt in 1979, with the rise of the Ayatollahs and the Islamic Republic, they felt as though Lebanon is a liberal country. It's mostly Christian. We need to go in and put our influence in there. Same thing with Jordan and Iraq and Syria. We need to spread our influence. We need to surround Israel. We need to make sure that this revolution spreads. And that's what they've been doing since 1979, is spreading their revolution throughout the Middle East. So why does it matter to us? Because that does put America America's safety in jeopardy. It puts Israel's safety in jeopardy. It puts Europe's safety in jeopardy, and also peaceful people in the Middle East, their safety in jeopardy as well. So if the Ayatollahs fall, if the Islamic Revolution falls, it changes the dynamic of how the Middle East looks. All of a sudden, that enemy of most of the Middle Eastern countries changes. Right now, the Saudis, many of the countries in the Abraham Accords, and Israel are all partnered together with one goal in mind, to see Iran disappear. They don't like Iran. So if Iran disappears, it's going to change the dynamic of the Middle East as well.
So, friends, all of that's unfolding right now, and I just bring this up as a side note that with so much happening, not only in the Middle East, but around the world and in our own nation as well, Franklin Graham posting right now about calling for a time of prayer and repentance scheduled for noon time tomorrow, saying if you think our nation is in trouble now, just wait. As our streets boil over with hate, anger, crime, drugs, and just sheer hopelessness, is there something we can do? He said, as a nation, our sins are so great, we have increasingly turned our back on God and his commands, embracing godless secularism. We need to ask his forgiveness and seek his face. And indeed, Chris, that's something we need to do as a nation.
Yes, and I think prayer is exactly what we need to be doing, getting on our knees and asking God for forgiveness, turning to him. And I know that if you confess your sins, God is faithful and just to forgive. And so I count myself thankful to the Lord for his grace and mercy and compassion, not only in my own life, but in how he's working in the world as well. Friends, again, if you'd like Israel My Glory magazine, a free one-year subscription, reach out to them at 800-257-7843. Just mention you heard Chris on Crosstalk offer that, and request your free one-year subscription. And for the I Love Israel sticker, send a text to 424-444-1948. Chris, thanks so much for being with us today. Jim, thank you. And friends, a reminder, as Scripture says, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. God bless you, friends. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.